Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of 100 Words or Less, the podcast. I'm your host, Ray Harkins, and I'm tired. I'm sick. This holiday just beat the absolute living crap out of me. But anyways, that's not important, right? What's important is that we are hanging out today with Jay Weinberg, professional drummer and just all-around nice dude. More about him in a minute, but propertyofzach.com. Visit their website, find all the latest in news, reviews, features, in-depth analyses of this music scene that we call home. And check it out. I love what they do, and I love our partnership with them. So give them some love. No real monologue today. I apologize, but my brain really can't fire on all cylinders. But in any event, our guest today, I am extremely excited to bring you. Jay Weinberg, who I know you have obviously seen in the news as of late, because he recently left his band that he was playing with Against Me. He'd been playing with them for about 2 or so years. But that wasn't the real reason I wanted to talk to him. Basically, he's just a professional drummer, like a dude that's played with Madball. You may have heard of a man called Bruce Springsteen, and I obviously am very sarcastic in saying that because I know everyone who has ever heard music has at least a topical knowledge of Bruce Springsteen. He's played drums with him for a little bit, and he's a traveling guy, and he's always wanted to make his money or his living with playing drums, and kind of however you can achieve that is obviously the direction he's going, but it all comes from a very sincere place, and so that was one of the reasons why I wanted to chat with him, and he just happened to be in Southern California. This conversation was before everything that happened with Against Me. Honestly, a good 95% of our conversation didn't even really concentrate on that band and the time that he spent in there. It was mostly about his upbringing, kind of how he got into drums, and everything that we talk about. Because for whatever reason, I just don't talk about people's current projects because I don't know. I just I just don't delve into it too much. But anyways, here's the conversation, and I hope you enjoy. Hey, dude, so how's the new record coming?
Yeah.
You'll get that.
Yeah. No, it's something different. Yeah, like I was saying, I think I was telling you earlier, like listening to like the interview that you did with Matt Pike, which is actually kind of funny because I'm meeting him later today.
Oh, nice.
He and his wife are gonna come to the East Street Band show.
Oh, that's great.
Tonight, and listening to just like it's basically it's just like going A to B for someone's life, and like you see what they do now, but hearing really how they got there and like where the idea came from to do what they do.
Right.
It's awesome.
Yeah, and that's what I like to do too, because it's like people. I also like to draw similarities where even if you don't like the person's band or what they do as a profession, like you'll still understand that they come from a similar world. Yeah. Like similar world, so you're not just like, oh, who the fuck? Like, I have no idea where this person came from. You're like, oh, like they're just like me.
Yeah.
They just found out about, they started buying records when they were however old and figured it out from there.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, so with you, born and raised on the East Coast?
Yeah, New Jersey my whole life. Lived in a couple different towns, but kind of stayed around the same area, based around Middletown, New Jersey.
Okay, yeah.
Which is 5.
What exit? What exit?
114. Yeah. I was always between 109 and 114, and now I've been living in Hoboken, which is right outside New York.
Sure.
I've been there for 5, almost 6 years.
Oh, okay.
I go to school there and stuff. But yeah, growing up in New Jersey my whole life, and it was right outside of Red Bank, New Jersey, which was kind of like it was the strangest hardcore scene ever. And it was God, I guess that was like 2005 to 2007 or 8. It was so short lived my experience with the Red Bank hardcore scene, but man, it's strange.
Yeah, yeah.
It's really strange.
And so you're I mean, most people would be able to just read your name and understand you come from a lineage of musicians. Like there's people that music has been an important part of your life.
It's been everything. Yeah.
And so I think a lot of people do get jealous when it's like they have, either friends or basically their parents are like, hey, like here's what music is, and like let's get you started off right.
Right.
Whereas like I look at my parents or other some of my other friends that are just like music was like it existed like the radio.
Yeah.
But there was never like that sort of here you go, and then I also do this as a profession and like kind of have this sort of like behind the scenes, yet I've got a really cultured taste in music, and like here you go, son.
Yeah.
And so like what was your your experience growing up? Like I mean, for most people that can do any research online would know like your father obviously plays drums. And was so like how was you being raised within that environment? I'm sure it was different and weird in a way.
Yeah, it was. It was really eclectic. I grew up. My mom was really, really musical, and she came from like her dad was really musical. He was an amazing pianist, and he was like he had kind of both sides of the brain working, where he could play piano really well, but he was also a physicist.
Holy, that's not common.
No, it was really weird. And he worked in Signal Corps. And,
wow.
And he was a teacher at Monmouth University and stuff. But he also had he had a knack for the arts and for music. And And so my mom, although she had been totally she was super into rock and roll and everything. She raised my sister and me on classical music, and that's all I knew for
interesting
for the first 5 years of my life.
Right.
All she played. I have heard the story that I was born to the song Voodoo Child, which I think is pretty awesome.
That is pretty awesome. Were you? But I presume it was in the hospital.
Yeah. So my mom was into all that stuff like Hendrix and Led Zeppelin and classic music like that. But she was also really into classical music.
Okay.
And that's all I knew. It was Beethoven and Chopin and Mozart and all that.
The classics.
Yeah. But that's all I knew of music. Like I didn't know what rock and roll was until the Who was doing Quadrophenia in '95, and that was like that was a band that my mom and dad I think shared that they loved, and they really wanted to get my sister and me into it, but my mom was like, I don't know, like that's totally different. They have no experience with that, and so they brought me like they gave me Quadrophenia, and I just could not stop listening to it. Like they tell me I don't remember specifically, but they tell me that I would like scream the lyrics in the car when we played it, and so anyway, my first show that I ever went to, I was 5, and my mom and dad took me to go see the Who. Quadrophenia.
I love that the experience of your parents sitting there. I can just imagine them sitting at like the dinner table, being like, all right, are we going to do this? Like, like, are we ready to unleash this world? Like, it's just funny that like, because that's not a common conversation.
No.
That's so cool.
It was, and considering like the backgrounds that they both come from, like really into rock and roll, that they just didn't show their kids. And like my sister's 3 years older than me, so she was 8 at the time, and that's like that's like when that's when I started getting into like finding out my own music that I wanted to check out. Right. And but yeah, the Who, they tell me like I have kind of a visual memory of it, but they tell me I was on my dad's shoulders with like my fist in the air, and I was just like I remember I think they had that this like ocean scenery with like Roger Daltrey singing Love Rain Over Me or whatever. And that's the only kind of visual thing I remember. I think Billy Idol was Cousin Kevin or something like that. It was a really wild show, and that's what like that was my first introduction to like guitar based music and loud music. And I from that they passed down the Beatles and the Stones.
Right,
and,
right. Once they're like, okay, like he's shown an interest in this, like here we go. And so like your home life, like how was it? How was it? Obviously, growing up, and like, did your mom work? Like,
she was a teacher for 15 years.
Okay,
but when she had my sister and me, she just concentrated on us,
raising a child.
Yeah, and it was a big help because because she was a history teacher.
Okay,
she just was able to help my sister and me through school,
of course,
and studying. And that was always really important to her. That's probably like still the reason I'm like still trying to plug away at school now. Right. It's kind of been hard to balance with the band and stuff, but her support when my sister and I were younger was like, that was everything. School wise. So that was
It's so funny because like my mom was a teacher as well, and it's like, I think there's something that's totally unspoken and like in our DNA when your parents are teachers, where it's just like, I got it, because I dropped out of school, and like my promise to my mom was like, I'll graduate when I'm 30. Like by the time I'm 30, I will have graduated, and I did, and it was seriously
talking about college.
Yeah. And I was like, I gotta fucking do this, and like it was just that, like you said, that sort of the culture that you're brought up in, where it's like, this is important. No matter what else, whatever else I'm doing, I should pay attention to this and at least like figure out how I'm going to eventually achieve this.
Yeah. I mean, I had always wanted to do music ever since I just started high school, and it was always something that I knew I wanted to do. It just got to the point where I couldn't balance the two. So I was doing college and like Madball simultaneously.
Right.
Going to Queens to like write our record.
Right.
Like 5 days a week, 7 or 6 days a week, and working on that like 8 hours a day on top of doing an 18 credit semester or something like that. And then touring.
Yeah.
It got hectic. So I once some time had passed, I was just like, okay, I'm gonna kind of do one, go back to the other, and like it's been cool. But so anyway, when I was younger, that was kind of my home life. It was centered around school. When I was 9, I started playing hockey, and I was never really into sports before I found hockey.
It's like you didn't play baseball, or you didn't
kind of did like here and there. I played soccer for like when I was 6 or 7,
right?
And I just never got it. I don't know. It just never clicked. But then went to a hockey game, and I couldn't stop.
Right.
And started skating, started playing hockey, started playing the house league.
Okay.
And music wasn't even really like, at this point I was like 9, and music wasn't on the table yet.
Oh yeah.
I wasn't even in my mind.
Right.
So my life was just consumed with hockey, and I was a goalie. And
okay. That's an intense position.
It was the only, but you know what I started was because I couldn't skate well.
Right.
So I thought like, as a goalie,
the least amount of skating.
Yeah, right. But turns out you learn later that the goalie skates the most.
Hustling constantly.
So that didn't. My plan kind of backfired, but I kind of gravitated towards the position, and you can almost kind of draw parallels to being a drummer in a sense. Is that like you're like the last line of defense, and as a goalie, there's like a saying that if you win, it's a team victory. If you lose,
it's your fault. Right.
In a lot of ways, you can kind of draw parallels to being a drummer. It's like, well, the tempo is in the drummer's hands, and the vibe of the pulse of the song is kind of in the drummer's hands. So
if you fall apart,
dude,
that's done.
Yeah. So I kind of liked that, just the pressure of the situation, and like you either perform or you don't, and you succeed or you don't, and that was kind of like I liked it, and I played travel hockey.
I was gonna say, you traveled around and did club hockey.
Yeah, kind of like an East Coast league. Like we played. We were based out of Red Bank, and played in New York a lot. Right. Went up to do like the Can-Am tournament in Lake Placid, and went up to Canada a couple times. Like played in Toronto and Montreal.
Yeah,
but and that's when I really loved traveling with a group of people and experiencing just like a place that wasn't my own.
Right.
And in a lot of ways that, like looking back on it, traveling, playing hockey is so much like, you know, touring with your band or something like that. You know, you meet the other team and it's all, you know, it was all respectful. Like all the teams like got along and hung out. Yeah. And then you play. And that's
but you're competitive because that's the nature of the sport, but you're not cutthroat.
Yeah. Music isn't competitive, but in a way, you know, you go to a town and you meet the other bands that are local to that town that are playing the show. And,
of course.
You know, you kind of create that little community. So that was really cool. And I loved playing hockey. But when I got to high school, that was kind of like...
Well, yeah. It's always funny. Like anytime my friends have played, like, you know, done that whole circuit, it's like, you really do have to make that sort of decision whether or not you have the time to dedicate to that, or it's like, all right, well, school's not going to be that important. I'm going to be traveling. You know, it's tough to be able to kind of choose one or the other, especially when you're playing at such a high level at an earlier age.
Yeah, I really enjoyed playing, and it was all that was on my mind until, you know, I played guitar here and there. Like I didn't really connect with it. It was cool, but I played bass, kind of liked it. Whatever. Hockey was just the most important thing. Right. And then for whatever reason, I just picked up the drums, and that just consumed my thoughts. You know, that took over everything. Yeah. So when I got into high school, played high school hockey for a year or 2 years, and I remember it going up until the last day before like training camp for our I played for my school and I had a good, you know, coaching relationship with my coach, and I told him like the day before our like training camp started for the upcoming season, I had been agonizing over the choice of like, well, I don't know anything about drums, but I know I really, really like it. Right. I'm comfortable with hockey, but I can't do both and be as good as I would want to be at both. You know, I have to pick.
You want a dedicated discipline. Sure.
Yeah, I don't want, you know, you don't want to just half-ass two things. Right. And be okay at both. You want to be better at one. Sure. And it was just a gut level decision that I had made. That was just like, well, this feels like the right thing to do right now. I don't know if I'm going to regret it. Like I was always, you know, when I was a kid, I was like, oh man, I'm going to play like in college. Like I wanted to go.
I wanted a scholarship. Sure.
Yeah. Whatever, I was, you know, when I was like, God, you know, 12 years old, I was like, yeah, I'm going to go to Michigan University. Right. And I'm going to like play hockey. Like, no way.
Who were your touchdowns as far as NHL players were concerned? Were you like, I want to be like these guys?
Loved Martin Brodeur. Like growing up in Jersey, I was a Devils fan, and
you kind of have to be.
Yeah, and you know, I had that love-hate of guys that were really good but played on the Flyers. Like, dude, Philadelphia.
You're like, dude, I can't like this.
Yeah, like Brian Boucher in 2003. Great at, you know, he was an amazing goalie, and he actually like kind of fell off the face of the earth because he didn't play in the NHL anymore. Whatever. Yeah. Loved watching him play, but I hated it.
Of course.
Hated all the
You're like, I like you, I hate your team.
Yeah, exactly. Right. You know, Patrick Waugh and you know, Johan Hedberg and like goalies. I loved goalies. And
the only goalie I ever, because I liked hockey for a very brief period of my life, but Ed Belfour from Chicago Blackhawks, he played for a long time, and then he went to
Dallas. Yep. I remember because I became a Devils fan at like a fortunate time. I became a fan in 1999. Oh yeah. And then watched that season. They didn't. Forget if they even made it into the playoffs. I forget, whatever. And then, but 2000 they won the cup. Right. And I remember watching the last couple games of that series, and Ed Belfour had gotten the flu. I think he got the flu. Sure. And he didn't play well the last game at home that we went to, that the Devils could have won the cup, but Mike Modano scored a goal in like the third overtime or something like that. And it was heartbreaking because we were all there, like wanted to see the cup, and it didn't happen. But then, like 2 days later, I remember them saying, like, "Oh, Ed Belfour was really sick," but they still played him. Right. And that's when Jason Arnott scored in second overtime. And loved it. But
that's awesome.
Yeah. But
and so then, in your obviously in your home life, like, you know, what when did you realize that obviously like, you know, what your dad was doing was, you know, something that's different from every other dad that kind of exists in the, I mean, like when you're going to school and stuff like that. Like,
I honestly didn't even know what he was doing when I was younger. You know, he had the TV show.
Right.
And I would see him, you know, he would come back from that around like 9 or 10 at night, so I'm going to bed.
Right, of course.
And, you know, I'm like doing homework or having dinner or something. And, and so I knew that was...
You're like, I knew he showed up to do that.
So. Yeah, I knew he was doing that, but I didn't watch the show. You know, I never watched the show until I was like... until I could stay up until, you know, the show was on at 12:30 at night. Yeah. I'm not staying up mid-grade school.
No way.
So then it was only when the E Street Band had gotten back together for the reunion tour in 99 that I started like, I think it was something that he and my mom had talked about, like, do we bring them on tour? Did we bring, you know, Jay and Allie, like, to the shows and stuff like that? And they did, and you know, I would go watch, and I didn't get it. I just didn't. I was like, so there's all these people at this show, and it's in a big place.
I know it's kind of funny because I've always reflected on that, like, you know, your experience, or you know, people like these experience where it's like you're raised in an environment, like I was just saying, where, you know, it's not, you know, your dad isn't an accountant. Your dad doesn't do this like specific, like, you know, okay, I know what that means. Yeah. But then you're dropped in the situation. You've got no context. Like you said, you're just showing up to the show and just being like, oh, like, what's this?
Yeah. I didn't know they had records. Right. I didn't know that there was music. Like, I was like, why do these people all know this stuff? I've never heard this in my life. But I didn't know. It was, I think I found out that they had like put out records maybe like 3 years later. Right. I was like, oh, these songs, I can listen to these songs when they're not playing the shows. Right. I got, and I started putting it together. Right. And they kept touring, you know, they did the reunion tour.
Of course.
They did a record, you know, they did the Rising record. And, and that's kind of when I was like putting it together, started traveling with them and just kind of getting a feel for what tour was or whatever. It's like, oh, you go to these different cities and you play shows and you play these songs that you've written or whatever. It's just getting a feel, because I had no idea ever. And then I started putting it together, and actually one of the guys that worked on the tour, his name was Andrew Courtney. He got me into, when I was like really young and just totally impressionable, he gave me 3 records that like changed my life. He gave me Alkaline Trio, Good Morning. This is like when I was like 12 or 13. Sure. Gave me Good Morning, Thrice, The Illusion of Safety, and Rocket from the Crypt. The Dracula's Scream, Dracula Scream. Yeah, gave me that. And those records were huge.
Yeah, no, that's a great like cross section.
Yeah, because he saw like maybe some bands that I was listening to. I forget what, but he was like, oh, you might be into this stuff. So he gave me gave me those records, and that was huge for me. But
that's cool.
But anyway, so touring was or just, you know, traveling with them was opening my eyes to just like what my dad had been up to. I honestly had no clue what he was doing for like the first 10 years of my life.
Right. You're just like, well, that's my dad. That's what. Know. Well, yeah, and I think that's indicative of obviously your parents, you know, they were very calculated in what they were obviously exposing you to. And it's like, it's good that there's that, you know, you were able to exist within, you know, a childhood that, you know, you were able to be a child and not like thinking about these, like, all right, place all this in context. You're just like, I don't care. I'm going to play hockey, or I want to, you know.
Yeah, that was, even when I was, you know, traveling with them then, I was still, hockey was it for me. Right, I never really wanted to play music. Right. You know, it didn't interest me.
I presume your parents were pretty excited about you being super into hockey, like they were.
Yeah, they were pretty stoked on that, and you know, God, they would have to be if they were like, my mom would driving you to a 6 a.m. game, and she would watch. She wouldn't just like drop me off. She would see you later. Right. Yeah, she would be there, and you know, they were really supportive, and my sister played hockey too. We played.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we went to rival high schools. Yeah. She went to one high school that had a really good performing arts. She's a great piano player. They had a great performing arts program.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom taught there, Red Bank Regional
okay.
High School, and I went to Rumson Fairhaven because they had a really good hockey team. I wanted to, out of all the teams that I was watching, like as a kid, you know, in grade school, I would go to the high school. You know, they were like the big kids.
Oh, dude,
it's
huge, yeah.
And I would go to the rink that I would be at House League at, and the high school teams would play on like a Friday night or something like that, and there would be all these people. It was like packed.
Yeah,
you know? It was like a sold out show.
Totally.
And
you felt the energy, and
dude, it was like being at an NHL show or something.
Right.
That. And I thought that was the pinnacle. Like I was like, oh my god, I want to play for RFH because they are incredible. And then, you know, all the incredible guys. I played with a bunch of really good people in the year or two that I played at the high school. But all the guys that I had looked up to, like the goalie, you know, he obviously graduated, and then I was the backup goalie for a little while, and you know, it wasn't the same team, and it wasn't the same vibe that I thought it was. And that's what made me think of, okay, maybe drums are cooler.
Right. Well, and it's funny. I really like, you hit on a very important point that I think it's like, as we move through our lives, like you should always have those points where it's like, okay, this is what the top means.
Yeah.
And then if you arrive to anywhere in that vicinity, you realize like, whoa, this is only the tip of the eye. Like, there is so much more to accomplish.
Oh yeah, I mean, you know, in the context of music, like, all I had wanted to do when I was I started playing drums when I was 14, started a band, and all I had ever wanted to do was play at Chubby's, which was no joke. This is it sounds
like an amazing sports bar,
dude. It is. It was a bar. It was the most depressing bars in Red Bank. Town I keep going back to.
Sure.
It was in Red Bank, and it was on like the main street. And I would go to shows there, and I would watch bands that I would just like. They were, you know, hometown hero kind of bands,
right?
And across the street was the Internet Cafe, which has actually since closed and become an Urban Outfitters. But the Internet Cafe was amazing because they would have floor hardcore shows.
Oh, nice!
And no place around us like had that. There was a VFW hall that was 20 minutes away, but there was the Internet Cafe, which was like 5-minute drive from my house. So
super safe for you to go to. Like your parents were okay with that.
Yeah, Internet Cafe. There's, you know, they sell cupcakes in the window.
What harm could be done here?
Yeah, and my favorite band from the area was a band called Away From It All, and they changed their name to Goshen Surface, and they'd since broke up and went on to other projects. But I think they were around for like a year. But I saw that band, I was just like, oh my god! They were really abrasive, really intense, and stuff. And I I ate it up.
Right.
But I was never the guy that was like in the pit.
Right.
I just never.
You were just observing.
Right? I was just observing. Yeah, it was kind of weird. That's why the Red Bank hardcore scene is so strange, because I always felt I was on the outskirts just wanting to watch the band and see what they did, and I was like, how could I do that? Like, I couldn't do it. I couldn't at the time. I couldn't even fathom like where I would start to do that. But but I knew I really liked it.
Sure.
And that was like my existence within the New Jersey community. I was like, I don't know any of you, and I don't.
Right. Who's that weird kid in the corner? Like
it was really like that. Yeah.
Right.
And I had my best friend at the time. Is like my best friend. We would go to shows all the time, and we were just the weird kids that were just standing on the side of the room, just like not really participating, but just absorbing what the band was doing, and that was really important to me.
And so you're, as you were going to high school, and you know, what was your experience like with that? Where obviously you were involved in hockey, but you know, because obviously, you know, just putting people into stereotypes and sort of like, you know, what group did you find yourself like fitting into, and did you like the high school experience, or was it kind of just something that you were doing because obviously you knew it was important to your parents?
Yeah, I didn't like the high school. I didn't like high school. I spent most of my time by myself, and I, you know, it's not to be like, oh, I'm goth kid. Alone,
I was
whatever.
angsty. Yeah.
It's just like I didn't relate to really many people. There were a couple people that I'll still even keep in touch with today, but and teachers that I liked, you know, and but a lot of teachers kind of looked at me and thought like, oh, he's probably just gonna be trouble, because you know, I was the kid when I went in my first day of high school. I had like black nail polish on, and I don't know. I guess I had a weird kind of vibe about me that just made teachers in a really just kind of really conservative part of town. It wasn't really open minded. Whereas my sister's high school was completely open minded.
Well, yeah, you're saying a
melting pot of everything,
and a little more liberal arts leaning. Like yeah.
Ours was like football high school, hockey high school,
sure,
baseball high school. Whatever, and that's great, but it just wasn't for me. And I took that time when I, loved playing hockey.
Right.
Got to high school, it wasn't really working out. The team was kind of splitting apart. There was really like a clique of people within the team and within my high school that I just didn't get along with.
Right.
And I never went to parties, never did any of that, and I kind of it was when I discovered drums, like in my freshman year, that I was just like, well, I'm gonna take my weekend time and just do this. So like Friday and Saturday night, I'm gonna hole up and play the drums, and that's it. And it was alone, I didn't play with anybody. It was just I put on headphones and played records like anybody does. And,
right.
And just do that, and then I would go to school, spend time by myself, and there were teachers
exist in there.
Yeah, I think there were teachers that got that though. Like there were younger teachers who I didn't butt heads with that kind of got like, oh, he's into the Ramones and the Clash and stuff that I was into when I was in high school or whatever. And
so you felt that those teachers had a context for where you're coming from, and they weren't like, oh, like we just shouldn't even talk to him. Yeah,
there were some that were so far that way that I couldn't have a good. There was no possibility for me to have a good.
And anytime I hear that, it totally, because I imagine your mom would obviously never do that to a student.
Yeah.
And my mom would never like look. I mean, she may make a judgment on a kid, but she would never be like, oh, like I shouldn't teach that kid because he's kind of weird looking.
Yeah, my mom told me a funny story a while ago. Funny, like she related to kids based on a lot of music stuff, and
of course,
when John Lennon was killed, there was a guy that like all she and this kid talked about were the Beatles. The Beatles were his life, and when John Lennon was killed, he came into school just completely
totally
a mess, devastated, whatever. My mom was too, and I think they had like a test that day or something, and he just like bombed the whole thing, and she like gave him a pass because she's like, I know what you're going understand, through. I know what you're going through. Right. So yeah, no, she to compare her to the teachers that I had that were cool, yeah, she was definitely and she would have been one of those.
It just sucks that you obviously hear about people, just like in any profession, you have your people that are good. And you have your people that suck, and you just wish that those teachers that sucked and made judgments on kids, would just be like, all right, get out of here.
Yeah,
it just always irks me. And so as like when you're, when you started to get into like independent music, and obviously starting to get into stuff that maybe your parents didn't have a context for, how do they react to that? Was it they were just like, oh, what's this weird stuff that Jay's bringing home?
I know, yeah, they It was interesting, and it went through layers, when it went from the Who to the Stones and the Beatles and whatever, and then it took a drastic like left turn when my dad brought me to Ozfest and brought me to see Slipknot and Slayer, and
what possessed him to? Was he just like, I think
they were on
the
Conan show, and he was like, oh my God, these guys are super scary and they wear masks. Like, you're going to love them. They're really loud and they're crazy.
That's awesome.
And I was into, the hardest thing I listened to was like Dude Ranch or something like that,
Yeah.
So I was like, okay. And,
sure.
And went to see them, and it blew my mind. So that whet my appetite for intense, loud,
getting into more extreme things.
Yeah, when bombs go off on the amplifiers and all the guys are yelling, and I had no frame of reference for that, so that was all new to me, and I really wanted to explore it. And I was really young. I was 9 years old.
Right, and I was going to say, because it's funny, because I think your musical journey was obviously much more accelerated than what your typical kid would be exposed to, just based on obviously your dad's profession, and it's just like, oh yeah, I have all the access to this stuff. Like, oh, let's see if Jay likes this.
Yeah. Well, and it was interesting because like my introduction to metal, and all that, like just heavy stuff, came from my dad, and then I had a friend whose dad was really into Bad Religion, and so we would drive around and we would listen to like American Jesus and stuff. That was the first like punk rock song that I'd heard. Okay. And I loved it. So I got into really heavy stuff. Right. I got into punk rock stuff and all that. It just kind of blended into it itself, because
at that time too, because you're so young, you're not concerned about like quote unquote scenes. Like You're just like, it's music.
Yeah, I mean, I still don't get scenes. What the fuck is that?
Totally.
But yeah, to me, it was unpolished. It was really just raw. I loved it, and that's what I wanted. I got a lot of that in hockey, and I just stopped getting that when I got into high school. So I wanted another fix of that, right? So that's when I started getting into, I guess, like independent music, quote unquote independent music. Like, got really into. I had a friend whose brother was really into like the drive-through bands. So got me into the movie Life and what like Finch was on was on drive-through, and a lot of those bands, like accessible bands to listen to, but still like it was different. It's not the Who,
no,
people that are into the Who might not get into that stuff.
Not at all.
So it began that process of finding out all these.
You have all these different inputs.
Yeah. And this is when I started finding music on my own. Because it wasn't something that my dad handed down to me or like my friend's dad handed down to me. It was like, okay, I'm finding this out from my friend, and then we go see this band, and then and then you find out a lot of bands through that, through the drive-through records bands or whatever. I found actually my first club show that I ever gone to was in 2002. Okay. My dad brought me and my friend to who was the guy that like got me into drive-through bands. Brought me to see Finch, My Chemical Romance, and The Used.
Oh sure.
When like all of their Finch was on that What It Is to Burn record. My Chem was on the You Brought Me Your Bullets. Whatever that album was, and The Used had just put out their self-titled record.
Oh yeah, it's huge.
It was a big time for whatever that music was.
Totally.
And that's honestly where that's when I met Brandon Steinecker, who plays in Rancid now. And he's, since then, I was 12, and I'm 22 now. He's been like one of my best friends ever since that day.
That's awesome.
And so that got me into, that show in particular was, I was 12 at the time, and I saw Brandon playing, and I was like, I could do that. That looks really, really, really fun. Right. And I think I really want to do that. And still playing hockey at this time, but that's when I was like, playing drums in a band looks really cool. Yeah. So I want to do that. And that's, I kind of meditated on that for like 2 years.
Right. Yeah. It started to, that was the seed that was planted, and then it germinated from there. And so technically, what was the first band that you played in that, that you played a show where it was like, all right.
First band that I ever played in was, we were called Sadie Mae.
Okay.
Named after Susan Atkins, who was one of the Manson family members.
Right, okay.
And I was 14. I just started playing drums, and we were just like a hardcore metal band. Okay. And basically...
And you were playing drums, I presume.
I was playing drums, yeah. And it was my first time I had played music with other people, but I had been playing drums for like, I don't know, maybe like 6 to 8 months. Okay. And,
so this is when you're like 14, 15?
14, yeah. Okay, and it was with a guitar player that went to my high school. He was also like a wrestler. And oh man, he was like, looking back on it, it's so funny. He would play guitar. He was like this big dude, like weightlifter dude. And he would play this Les Paul that the strap was a giant chain. Like, like chains that you'll like wrap around your tires or whatever.
Of course. Right.
Yeah, it was like that. And oh my god,
that's amazing.
Yeah, and we would we were a band that basically just got together, listened to Lamb of God and Shadows Fall, and Slipknot, and we would do that for like 5 hours, and then we would like write a riff,
right,
or something like that.
You know, you just do a bunch of covers,
yeah,
and then,
we just knew that we like loved heavy music, and we loved just like sitting around and headbanging,
right.
And then, oh yeah, we have instruments too. Here's this riff that I was working on. Oh, let's do that. And and we were together for 2 years, and we played 2 shows.
One show a year.
Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah, and the first show had it was at the Saint in Asbury Park.
Okay.
And that had like 20 to 30 people, all close friends. And
of
family.
Of course.
And then I think they hated it so much that people really close to us wouldn't say it, but the second show that we played, like a year later, we asked all those people if like they would want to come see, and none of them came. We played to the band that played after us.
Oh, one of those shows?
Yeah, one of those shows. And you do that, you know?
Of course.
All bands do that. But
but
that was our first experience with that, being like 14 years old. And it was,
where is everybody?
Yeah, it was funny. But
that's incredible.
Yeah, but so that Sadie Mae was my first band,
and so then like as you were, you know, getting to the point in schooling where it was like, all right, like, you know, what did you have any sense of like were you just like, I'm all in for music, I want to try to find a way to like make that happen as my life?
Yeah, that was the day that I called my coach and told him that I wasn't gonna do, because hockey was my life, and now I just like one day I was like, okay, hockey's now not my life, music is my life, and that's what I'm gonna do. And it hasn't changed since then. You know, that was 8 years ago. Right. So that was the day when I decided I wasn't gonna, and I literally haven't played hockey since then. I've wanted to, you know.
Sure.
I've skated a bunch, but I haven't played.
Picked up a stick.
I haven't played a game. I've had a lot of friends, like a lot of people in bands I've found have really like been into hockey, and we'll talk about like, we gotta play together. It just never happens.
Yeah. Well, it's so much. I mean, hockey is obviously so much harder than just like, hey, let's go to a basketball court.
Oh yeah. No.
Yeah. Hey, let's go get pads and find this and do that.
Get ice time and whatever. Right. And hockey rinks are just like few and far between. They keep shutting down. The one that I think the one that I had played at a lot in Wall Township, I think it like closed down. But, because like nobody. I mean, hockey's no longer on TV anymore. It used to be on like NBC.
It's true, yeah. Saturdays you would 100% have a hockey game on.
Now it's on Versus or whatever.
It's true.
But like there's a bunch of channels that like, I can't watch my favorite team anymore because I don't have that channel or something like that. And all of them are just whatever. It's hockey. Nobody cares about hockey.
No, it's true. Yeah. Move to Canada and then that's the national sport.
Yeah, exactly.
And so then as you were obviously you making the decision that, all right, I want to try to make music my life. Yeah. I mean, your parents obviously understood that.
Yeah.
To a certain extent, I'm sure.
Yeah, they didn't understand it when I was just like, oh well, I'm not gonna finish high school. I'm gonna start a band, and I'm gonna just tour because that's what people do now. Right. And that.
So was that your sophomore or junior year that you were
sophomore, like end of my sophomore year?
Yeah.
That I started another band.
Okay.
And it was my favorite thing, and I dedicated, you know, all my time to it, and became just the asshole guy in the band that just like ran everything. And because anybody looking back on it, I wish I had kind of given other people that were around us and other people in the band like, oh yeah, you can do this and you can do this.
Right.
Nope. I got everything covered.
Yeah. And, and I'm sure. I mean, to be fair, just hearing it from the outsider's perspective, it's like, you had quit everything to do that. Yeah. Whereas I imagine a lot of other people that are in that situation are like, you know, they're still going to high school.
Yeah. So I didn't quit high school. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But the band it was everything to me.
Right.
And I had a free period in high school. Every free period, I was designing a flyer for a show, and that band we actually played a lot. It was called Chaosis.
Okay.
And that band we played a bunch. Like we would play at least once a month, and we ended up. That was the first band where I ended up playing, throwing shows at my house.
Oh, nice.
And and it was cool because it was like
that's definitely such a part of New Jersey. indie having shows at houses, whereas like out here on the West Coast, it's like you can have like a band play for like 10 minutes and then the cops will show up.
Yeah. No, here it was, or in New Jersey, it was different, and I didn't learn about like, wow, New Jersey really does have a lot of shows. I learned that way later.
Right.
I thought it was like a unique thing that we were doing.
Right. Which is awesome.
Yeah, and we ended up being like the competition for the local promoters, who ended up like we put on a show on a Saturday. Had one of the shows, actually I think the first one we had Sadie Mae, because they continued. I quit that band to start this other band.
Okay.
And they got another drummer, and I was still friends with them, and they played this show, and my band will headline, and put on at least like a show a month, like the last Saturday of every month. And we had a bunch of like a Halloween party, and we would get just get a lot of pizza, people that were into the Red Bank scene, people that we liked, people that like we wanted to be there. We invited them, and it got to the point where like everybody that would go to the local promoter at the time was called Jersey Shows. They might still be around, but they put on shows, and we would have one like the same night or something like that.
Yeah.
And everybody that was gonna go, I remember there was one time everybody that was gonna go to X band, whatever, came to our show, and we packed it. It was awesome. It was a lot of fun. But I got a call from that promoter, and because he had put on a lot of our shows when we were just starting out, and he was like, "What the fuck? Like, you're taking all my, all these
all
people."
my business, right?
And I was just like, "Sorry,
yeah,
I guess,
right."
But I wasn't sorry.
Yeah,
I was happy. I was like,
right. Because you were building something on your own that was so like organic and just like fun.
Yeah, but like you said, that was everything. Planning, making flyers and planning these house shows and trying to get in touch with people that ran the Knights of Columbus on 36 where we lived.
Sure.
That was all top priority to me.
Right.
School was secondary.
Sure.
It was completely like it was an afterthought, and I still wanted to like I did well on quizzes and stuff, and like that's probably, like you said, just from having a mom
in
that
your
was a
DNA.
teacher. It's in your DNA to
Right.
want to like, okay, well, if I got like a 70 on this, well, I should do better, and whatever. So I wanted to be a good student, graduated, and that's when music was like,
Yeah, so the whole plan was that, like, obviously once you graduated high school, you're like, I want to find a way to make a living off of music.
I mean, I had no idea how I was going to do it.
Right,
I didn't know.
But you knew that's what you wanted to do.
I knew I wanted to do it. I just had no idea of what I would do. So to kind of to combat that, I went to a college where I didn't know anybody. A lot of people I knew went to college because they were going with like several other people.
Of course,
and,
right.
I wanted to go. My sister got into NYU. She went there, and I would go up to New York. This is actually, to back up a little bit, from when I was like 13 through 17, I guess, like when I graduated high school, I would go up to New York like every weekend and hang out, try and find shows and stuff. And I would go to, like, my sister was right in the Village.
Okay.
So that was around like the St. Mark's area.
Sure,
there was a lot
of
music happening around there.
Tons.
CBGB's was there. Like, I got to go there a bunch before it closed. Got to play there. It was awesome.
That's right.
Yeah, but I was going up to New York a lot, and I saw so much stuff happening around NYU, and I was like, oh my God, I really want to go there. I got to go there. Sent all my stuff, applied, and didn't get in. And I was crushed, but I was just like, well, whatever, I'll find something else.
Right.
And and then I applied to Stevens in Hoboken, and I'm so much happier there. That's where I still am.
Right.
I live across the street from where the school is. And,
okay.
And it's, it's been such a better home because it's, well, a lot of reasons that are separate from this story, but,
yeah.
But so anyway, I wanted to go to NYU and be in like the midst of all that.
Of course.
And,
you wanted to be right in the middle of it.
Right in the middle of it. Go to shows all the time.
Of course.
And be around, the Village area and Washington Square Park and whatever. That's the thing. And, but I didn't know what I was going to do musically. My band, Chaoses had split up. Right. Because we all went to different schools. So this is a total true story. I went on MySpace looking, this is when MySpace was like,
well, dude,
2008 was, of course. It was still
huge. Yeah,
Facebook was getting there.
Right.
MySpace was still the big thing.
Of course.
And I went on MySpace looking at New York bands. I don't know how I would look for it, but like I would look for New York bands that needed a drummer.
Needed a drummer, sure.
And I found the one that appealed to me the most. Was a band called The Reveling.
Okay.
From New York. It was like a punk band. Auditioned and it felt awesome. So I was like, okay.
So you just sent them a message. You're like, hey, I can play.
Yeah, like they had a thing like, hey, so and so is going off to get his doctorate or something like that, or going off to do more school. So we need a drummer, and
we're looking for
looking for a drummer. So that was it, and I had just started school. Mm-hmm. I got the Reveling, and we're playing shows at what I still feel was like really important, and I still, whenever I'm home, I try and go to like random shows in Brooklyn, you know, like at there was one place, oh god, I forget what it was called, but it was a great like punker flat place that it was like a 2-level thing. Show happened on the first level. You go upstairs and you find that there's a giant hole cut out in the floor of the second story. And there's like bikes hanging everywhere, and every wall is spray painted. And we would play shows here because the band, they're much older than me. They were like, I was 18, and I think our guitar player was like 27, or something like that. So that was the age difference. And, where was I going? So I would go to these places that like, I'm like, wow, this kind of place exists, and you can see it in, you know, SLC Punk, but you don't think that this is in whatever. You just don't think about that kind of stuff when you're 17 or 18,
of course.
And so, but then I would go and we played these shows, and I really loved it, and it was fun. And then once I had been doing that for like, I was in college doing that simultaneously with college, and like, okay, classes end, I go to New York to practice, and then I come back, and it was cool. It was a routine that I really liked. And then the scheduling conflict came up with my dad and the TV show that he was going to have to be at the start of the Tonight Show at the same time that one of the E Street Band's tours were going to start. And they needed somebody to fill in. And that was kind of what like interrupted everything. In the best way possible.
Well, of course, But
hey,
do you want to play in front of a few people? I don't know, maybe.
So that was kind of like this moment where I was kind of, you know, doing the high school band stuff, doing the college band thing, and then all of a sudden this interesting opportunity came up where it was like, I didn't think, nobody thought of that it would ever happen, you know, and but it just kind of happened, and
how did your dad introduce that to you? Was he just like, hey, how did like?
Yeah, it was weird. What had happened was over years, you know, since the band got back together, you know, before they got back together, they all had kids, and you know, my sister and me included, and all the kids of the band have like gotten up on stage and played. Like my sister, I was in awe of what my sister did when she was like 13. She got up and played keyboard to a song. When
that's incredible.
Yeah, when they played a show in New York, and I thought that was incredible, and I was just like, oh man, like that's just the next level, And all the kids, I think like everybody who had a kid, their kid has been on stage. I was the last one who had never done it. Just because, well, I don't play guitar, I don't play bass. Well, I do, but like it's not good, And what, you're gonna have me sit on the drums? You can't.
Yeah,
if I'm messing up, you can't just pull that down in the mix.
That's
like,
true.
That's just not.
Yeah, this is way too obvious if he fucks up.
Exactly. It's just, it's over. And like I said, that's that pressure situation of like being a goalie. You draw a lot of parallels to the drummer. It's like
sure.
And my dad, they were doing one of their last shows of that whole touring kind of cycle, and he was like, why don't you play with us at soundcheck? Do a song at soundcheck.
Oh, okay.
I was like, yeah, that'd be awesome.
Fun. That's easy.
Yeah. So we did Born to Run at soundcheck, and it sounded good. It sounded like it was fun.
Yeah,
I loved it. And I had never played with like in-ear monitors, and there's a band. Whatever. It was a whole new just sensory overload thing, but I loved it. And so then it felt really good. So that night they were like, well, why don't we just do that during the show? And so we did, and it was right before I had gone to college. It was like it was the summer before I had started college, like maybe 2 weeks before.
Right.
And it was at Giant Stadium. And
Right.
I did that, and that was amazing.
Yeah. I mean, those are the sort of experiences where it's like obviously you can reflect on it now and be like, that was amazing, but you're just like that you could pull yourself together enough to be like, all right, like, this is what I'm doing.
Well, it was only for that one day. I knew I was like, I'm going to do this to say I did it.
Right.
And then that's it. And
Right.
then I never have to do it again.
Sure.
And I've been there, like
Right.
I can say that I did that. And,
Yeah.
And that was it. Never thought of doing it again.
Sure.
It was a moment in time, and that was it.
Yeah.
But then the scheduling conflict happened with the Tonight Show and
Right.
and the tour. And my dad had asked me, like, I would go back home all
Of course.
between, like, on the weekends and stuff to play drums because my drums were at my house.
Sure.
And my dad asked me, he said, like, hey, I don't know if this is actually going to happen, but I think the tour is going to coincide with the Tonight Show happening.
Mm-hmm.
I'll need to be in 2 places at once, and I can't, and we need to find somebody to play.
Right.
So you might get asked to do this. He's
Wow.
like, I don't know if it's going to happen.
Right.
But it
I'm
might
just
happen.
prepping you.
Yeah, he's like, don't be disappointed if it doesn't happen, but it might happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it happened. And
That's crazy.
yeah, and Bruce asked if I would want to do it.
Sure.
And I did it. And I said yeah. And that was like, that's when everything became casual. Like, yeah, you got to play a show on the weekend and or something like that. That's when it became something that just like took all my attention.
Of course.
And I was still doing school at
Right.
the time too. So I kind of posed it to the school. I was like, hey, I really want to do school and I really want to do this, but I also have this
I kind of can't say
this
no
awesome
to this.
opportunity.
Right.
I would love to do both if that's okay with you, but
Sure.
if I have to choose one or the other,
Right.
I hope you are
Right.
are okay.
You may
I
have
hope
heard. You may
understand.
have heard of the boss. I have to play with him.
That was kind of what it came down to.
Sure.
So they were like, well, let's see if you can do it.
Right.
Let's see if that's something that we can make happen, and we made it happen.
That's awesome.
Through like a couple U.S. tours and European tours.
Sure.
It was over It was over 2009,
Right.
and some of the most formative experience that I've
Oh, of course.
ever had. I was 18. When
Well,
I
yeah, and I think it's so cool because it's like you were able to, obviously step into something that is so massive. It's an empire, and to be able to, develop, like you said, you took it super seriously, and it's like that you weren't obviously going to disrespect your family, your dad, but just being like, whatever, dude, like, here, it's like you're like, no, I'm fucking showing up, I'm doing this, and it's like that obviously will bleed over to all of your experiences within life and be like, no matter what I'm doing, I'm going to do this and I'm going to dedicate myself to it, because like you said, you didn't want to be like half-assing two things.
Yeah, and it was the biggest thing that had happened in my life,
Of course.
up until then. So I wanted to take it really seriously, and
Sure.
And that's what just kind of like set the stage for everything that I wanted.
Right.
I how I put this, I learned that I wanted to do this,
Right.
and through doing that whole tour and whatever, I got a taste of like, this is what it's like to do it.
Sure.
And I knew it wasn't, I knew from day one that it wasn't going to be forever.
Right. This is not your reality from here on out.
No,
right.
yeah, it's not reality, man.
Right.
But it's great, and
Of
it
course.
is my family.
Right.
Like those people.
And you'd been around him for so long.
At that point, I had been on the road with them for like 9 years.
Right.
But even before then, my dad was still close to everybody.
Of course.
So I had known those people since I was a little baby.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a real family, and I've been like, everybody, all the people on the tour,
Of course,
are just like, their friends and fans still are.
Right.
That's honestly why I'm here in California right now.
Right.
It's to just like hang out.
Yeah.
They're my favorite band.
Right.
So any opportunity I get when I'm off tour now, I want to watch them do what they do.
Well, of course, yeah. Because like, it's all you view that as is an extension of your family. It's like, this has
it really
essentially
is.
been able to take care of you, I mean, financially, and like just basically be able to give you this support system that you have just outside of your immediate family.
Yeah, and Bruce was awesome in helping me find out really what I wanted to do with the drums, and
that's cool.
Yeah, almost like through like not even saying anything. It was just the vibe that he projects.
Sure.
You know, it was you can't describe it other than, you know, it was just awesome.
It was an amazing experience.
Yeah, and
so how did you? Because like I remember, I mean, honestly, when I first became knowledgeable of you is when, you know, when the news about Madball came out, where it was just like, oh yeah, like Jay Weinberg. I mean, like I had maybe heard of your name, but like more of a fixture within the independent music, where it's like, you know, you start to see like, you know, punknews.org be like, hey, Jay Weinberg, son of Max Weinberg, is playing for Madball, and everyone was like, what?
Yeah,
like,
which was everybody's reaction,
of course.
Which was
I imagine.
I love that.
Right. It's like during that whole experience. I mean, like you said, you've obviously done you know, a number of interviews, and you know, obviously you guys split off. It didn't work out, et cetera, et cetera. But like when that initial experience happened for you, where it was like, all right, I am going to join Madball, which like is like, you know, what? I mean, was it? It was obviously because you wanted to push yourself and challenge yourself in a way. Yeah. But then, you know, did you receive a lot of that feedback, or was it just like, Madball? Like, this is such a weird move. Like,
yeah, but like to me, it wasn't weird.
Sure,
it was natural.
Right,
it happened naturally. But and like I would talk about people, because people would ask me, you know, like, oh, so what's your background? Like, what kind of bands do you play in? And I'm like, I play in metal bands, and I play in like yell your head off kind of bands. And,
sure.
And these are my favorite bands, and these are the bands I really look up to.
Right.
And they're all like, oh yeah, whatever. But you're a rock and roll drummer, and you play rock and roll, and you know, I was playing with the E Street Band and stuff like that. So
right.
So I don't think people really took that side of me that seriously.
I can imagine.
Whatever.
When you've done something like what you have, and obviously your family, your pedigree, people are going to look at you and judge you. Like, plain and simple. Yeah. And I'm sure you've experienced that through, I mean, a lot of aspects in your life where it's just like, oh, that's the fucking kid. Like, that's the... But then when you're able to do the thing that I respect about, I mean, this is fast forwarding, but the thing I respect about you the most is the fact that you've obviously been able to embrace what you've been raised around, but then also obviously set your own course. Because it's like, there's a lot of times where it's like people that have been introduced to, you know, a non-traditional environment such as yourself, where it's like, you know, a musician family and everything. You know, sometimes they just become, you know, kind of a parody and a joke of themselves, where it's just like, I mean, this is a random example, but it's like, you know, a comedian like Pauly Shore, where it's like his mom, you know, was like the person who did the Comedy Store in LA, and she started that. It's like, you know, of course he had no choice but to become a comedian. And then it's like, you know, when he was doing his thing, like, of course he had his own unique voice, but then it's like, you know, after his sort of star was not rising anymore, it was going down, people were just, you know, he's a joke. And it was like, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, you know, he was trying to force himself into like, okay, I'm still going to be this comedian, I'm going to be this person, but it's like looking at what you've done, where it's just like, all right, I've done this, I'm playing with Madball, playing with Against Me, and you're just like, all you're doing is what you have wanted to do once you started to figure out what drums were.
Thanks. Yeah. You know, really, that I love, obviously I love my dad,
right?
You know, and he's been,
of course,
he and my mom and just everybody that's been close to me, like they have been super supportive, and I love that.
Right.
But it surprises some people when I say I didn't take drum lessons or anything like that. And, just because, and I find that the most valuable thing that my dad gave me was just freedom to do whatever. Find out, you know, I found this on myself. You find it for yourself. You know,
of course,
you find it on your own.
Right.
So that's what it was, and I just had to find out what I wanted to do with music, and I just gravitated towards different things. You know, we grew up in completely different ages. You know, where my version of the Beach Boys and the, you know, and the Dave Clark 5 or whatever, it's music that's, you know, still, it's relevant and cool or whatever.
Right.
Those bands that were like, my dad had those bands.
Right.
I had, you know, Mastodon.
Of course.
And I had, like all these just bands, these aggressive bands that I just gravitated towards.
Of course.
So when I was doing all these bands in high school, And then I went to do the E Street Band.
Right.
So, I love rock and roll. And
that's
everything to me, just as long as it had a heart and it had a soul to it and it had a purpose, that was just, it resonated with me.
Sure.
And that's all the stuff that still resonates with me. But that all made sense. And then to go to Madball, it made sense. But it didn't make sense to some people. And,
it doesn't make sense to people that are on the outside looking in. You're like, because they can't, they don't trace you contextually to where you ended up. They're just like, like Madball hired a session drummer. Like that, I'm sure that's a lot of people were just like, oh yeah, like this kid, this was just like a publicity stunt for Madball or something.
Yeah. Well, it happened in like the most natural way. You know, like we've been mutual friends. We've had mutual friends through H2O. You know, like I've the wife of H2O's guitar player Rusty, her name's Debbie. Sure. She worked with my dad for like 15, probably more years. Sure. And she got me into punk rock. You know, she handed me down like all these great records and got me into H2O and stuff like that. So through H2O and going to H2O shows, I became familiar with Madball because they're so close. And we had a lot of mutual friends. Met with Mitz, the Madball's guitar player, and I was doing the this drum off thing. This was like kind of shortly after the E Street Band tour. It all wound down, and I was kind of like, all right, now is time.
What's my next chapter?
What's my next chapter? And I was still doing the Reveling at the time. I was doing that simultaneously, doing the E Street Band and the Reveling at the same time.
Sure.
So I was already busy, but I was kind of looking for like, well, man, I kind of want to be more occupied. And
I'm sure you also wanted to obviously be able to, contribute creatively as well, like even more so, because like the Reveling, you obviously joined up as they were going. And
but that's the thing is like I since high school, like I was just like joining bands, or whatever. Like I joined the Reveling, because they needed a drummer, and I looked them up, and they needed a drummer. I played with the E Street Band because they needed a drummer.
You joined them,
And then Madball needed a drummer, so I was doing this drum off thing with my dad, and Mitz who I'd like just seen like a couple weeks before then, and had talked about hockey. He's a big hockey fan, and talked a lot about hockey and like exchanged information. He saw that I was doing this drum off thing, and he sent me an email like, "Hey, do you know any drummers that are out there that would want to play with Madball? Because like we need a guy, and let me know, like let me know if there's anybody out there." And I emailed him back. I was like, what if I did it? Yeah. I'll do it. And he was like, yeah, you'd be into doing that? And I was like, yeah. So that's just how bands got together or get together, it's
the simplest of stories where it's just like, friends and people, and it's a simple question.
Yeah. So to me, like drawing the lineage between the E Street Band and Madball is different. And
of course.
Maybe it's not predictable.
Yeah.
But to me, it was natural. It made sense.
Right.
So yeah, I had a horrible audition. I remember that. Because it was really short notice. Like the tour, this was the Rebellion tour that we were talking about.
Right.
This was maybe like 2.5 weeks after I had just exchanged emails with him.
Oh shit!
So he sent me like 20-something songs, whatever, like the set.
Yeah, and it's not like Madball doesn't have a lot of songs to choose from. It's like here's this library of of music. How about you learn a few?
Honestly, that was out of all the performance experience and all the amazing things that I'll always cherish and carry with me from the E Street Band.
Right.
One of the things that I found most important was the ability to learn a song really quickly.
Right.
Because
it's true.
What we would do typically is there were like 5 songs. There was like 15, maybe like 20 songs that would stay in the set list.
Right.
And then like another 15 or something that would like switch out.
Interchangeable, sure.
Yeah, always changing, always keeping it fresh. And they do that more than ever now. Jesus Christ. But I would be learning like 5 songs a day while we were on the road.
Right.
Like driving to the show. I'd have my iPod on and like Bruce would give me a list of, 5 songs, learn these on the way to the sound check, and we play those. And it's not like polyrhythm craziness going on, but it's a
song you need to learn nonetheless.
Yeah, and so that helped me with like, okay, Madball tour coming up in 2 weeks. I got 25 songs to learn. I can do this. And so I was in California at the time, flew back, did a show at the Reveling, and then the next morning I had my audition with Madball. Okay. And I was jet lagged, I was tired, I'd been up all night doing this show with the Reveling. Right. And I played horribly. Yeah. It was bad. But but I think I showed enough like drive to make them be. Or it was me, Mitz, and Paul Delaney. He's a good friend who plays bass and plays in Black Anvil and stuff. And I played horribly, but I think I was like, yeah, like I really want to do this. I really want to do this.
You're like, my enthusiasm shone
I think
through.
Maybe that compensated for what I just could not do on the drums. And then I came back like the week after or whatever. I'd practice all the stuff. And then
then they were like, all right, here we go.
Yeah, and then I met Freddie the day, or like maybe like 2 hours before our first show.
You're like, hey, here's Freddie. We'll be playing together.
That's what it was.
You just got thrown in.
Yeah. And then did the Rebellion tour, and that was my first European tour where I wasn't like in my comfort zone. You know, not with people that I've known all my life. Right. And,
it's your first touring experience outside of what you've known.
Yeah. Sure. You know, I'd done tours, like the Reveling toured out to Chicago and back, and with Chaosis we went to Florida and back. When we were like 16 or whatever. Our guitar player, his dad, ran a Dodge dealership, and we couldn't rent cars.
No, you're 16.
Yeah. So we rented like a like a van, and but we couldn't, we couldn't legally. So we rented a van and drove down to did shows all the way to Florida and stuff, and that was my first experience touring. But so then I did all this stuff, and then I went on tour with Madball, did that, and it was amazing. I mean, went to all these countries and saw all this culture and saw so much stuff, and really got into. I was like, yes, this is the music community I've been dreaming of. This community that's based on like aggressive music, and just like, I felt so good about it, and then they went to Greece. That was awesome.
Right. And because you played with them for about like a year and a half or so.
Yeah, a little less than a year.
Yeah,
okay. But did that, and we basically came home from that, and then like the week after that, was like, all right, we got to make a new record. Right. So let's start writing a new record. Right. And it was at that time I was still doing a full course load of stuff at school, and still doing the Reveling. Right. So it was just kind of like, doing a lot of stuff, and I unfortunately had to leave the Reveling, and I wanted to keep doing it.
You've been with it for so long.
Right? Yeah, and it was a bummer, but I had to make the decision to Madball's gonna be really active, and I feel really good about it. So.
Right, and you're in the process of getting a new record with them, and you feel a part of it, right?
Yeah, and we were getting together like every day, jamming in our practice space, and made a record, and then the stuff that happened, it's whatever. It's in the past, and you move on. But
I mean, it's like you were saying earlier in regards to, people come from different cultures, and it's like in all the professional dealings I've ever dealt with Madball, they just come from a different world, like from what I've come from what you've come from, and so when you have, it's already difficult enough to be in a band. But when you are combining people from completely different walks and are trying to have them all be creative, be business-minded, it's difficult.
Yeah. It's and not to mention, I'm like at this point I'm still 19.
Right, you're a kid.
Yeah, and so, which I mean that's not far from where I am right now. No, 22, but but it just got to the point it didn't work out. Stuff doesn't work out, you know? And totally. And I look back on it as a great experience. I traveled, I made music. Sure. I was really proud of everything that we'd done, and it was a chapter in my life that, came to a close.
Of course.
And that was it. So that's all.
And then the transition point into Against Me was it's once I heard that obviously you were playing with them, it to me, it seems like it just makes sense.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it just feels like it's like not only do you stylistically fit in with them, just like from a drummer perspective and just like obviously your own upbringing, But it's just, the way that the band, especially is going now, where it's like, a lot more control is falling directly into their hands, or your guys' hands. And so it's just, it's exciting. Like,
yeah. It happened in a really natural way. I left Madball, and I was going to focus on school and just do that.
Sure.
And, moved back, like, I was in Hoboken for a while, and I was going to concentrate on school. And then the whole, just that, whatever ugliness had gone online about the Madball stuff happened. And literally, like, the day that became public, our bass player Andrew, he called me, and we've been friends. To back up a little bit, I've been friends with with Laura and James and Andrew and Jordan since I was 13 or 14. We met really young, and Against Me was the band that toured so often that they would be in my area 4 or 5 times a year. So it was like every couple weeks I would go to an Against Me show and bring my friend or something like that, and it was a band that I just got the closest to just by nature of, like, we saw each other so often.
Of course.
I'd see other friends' bands once every 2.5 years, just because they don't tour as much, or they're off wherever, I don't know, whatever. But they would be in New York or New Jersey all the time, and so I would go to their shows, and we ended up we would do this thing like Warren jumped in front of the drums during the last song at a show in New York, and I was standing right behind the kit, like off to the side, and I was like, he's not coming back. And so I like got up and finished. It was We Laugh at Danger and Break All the Rules.
Okay.
And it has that clapping section, and then we had talked about me like, oh yeah, like jam on the last song or whatever, and it happened, and it was awesome, and it became this like fun thing that we would do occasionally
when you were there, and everyone was like,
it'd be a fun thing, and so we did that, and we just became friends, kept in touch, and whatever, and Andrew called me, and he was like, hey, are you going to be around for these shows, because I know you don't have a band anymore.
And he's like, I was reading some stuff online. I'm aware.
And he was like, are you doing anything? Because we need somebody, and we'd like I would want to jam with you. And so I was like, yes. And without hesitation, I just knew it was going to be awesome. And so then like I meditated on that for a little bit, and like I called my best friend who like the band we got together on was like Against Me. And we would go to shows all the time, whatever. It was awesome. And so I called him. I was like, dude, guess what happened? And so anyway, I called Andrew back the next day, and I was like, dude, just so you know, I really, really want to do this. So like,
I'm pretty serious about
this. Like, dude, like I really want to play with you guys. So, and it was just going to be for these 3 shows. Or whatever, like a couple radio shows in radio festivals in Florida and one in California. And I was like, I really want to do this. Like, I would love to play a couple shows with you guys. And so he was like, okay, cool. I'll pass it on. And we talked through email and stuff, and then I got down to Florida where they all are. And we jammed. I got down there, and I thought we were just gonna like go out, get some food or whatever, and jam the next day. But we went out. We went to the practice space and jammed from like 10 at night till like 4 in the morning. And
that's awesome.
And it was just so much fun. That because those are the songs of my childhood. Those are songs that I remember. It was awesome. So, whatever.
It's nostalgic for you to you're like, wow, I get to actually play these songs that meant so much to me.
Exactly.
It still means so much.
Exactly. And that was, I mean, really, it's kind of like a common thread that, through like the E Street Band and Madball, it's like these are all parts of my just learning music. That like the E Street Band, like, Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band was my music. That was my upbringing.
Of course.
I was around those songs for so long, So to be playing them felt like second nature, and then to be playing Against Me songs felt like second nature.
Right.
And it felt so good that the next morning they were just like, "You want to just join the band?"
Yeah.
So that's what it was.
Yeah.
That's what we've been doing.
Yeah, that's what you've been doing ever since.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so cool. I really do like how, you know, to sort of wrap this up in conclusion.
Yeah.
I like how you're pulling on the thread of like, there is a commonality between all of these.
Yeah.
Because obviously, like you said, most people would look at these and just be like, oh, these are like, you know, maybe you could put Madball Against Me in a somewhat similar world, but obviously your experience with the E Street Band is something completely different. But it's like, essentially, all musicians start out with obviously similar goals and similar contexts. You know, there are very few, I mean, even though you could look at the musical culture right now and think that there are a lot of people that are just simply starting bands or playing music to make money. There's always going to be an element of that.
Yeah.
But with everything that you have experienced, that's like, you know, Madball wasn't starting off and like, all right, we're going to make this a 30+ year career. You know, Against Me is the same thing. They're like, no, we just want to play all the living rooms and across America.
Right.
And, you know, Bruce Springsteen, like, you can easily trace back to where he was when he started. And it's like, those are all common themes. And like the fact that you've been able to kind of experience all those different worlds, just like you said, makes it all the more clear to you. But to another person might be like, oh, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. It's to me it makes sense.
Right.
It's all one big thing.
Sure.
To me,
Yeah. I'm very glad that you were able to hang out. And obviously
seriously.
lay this all out because I was just excited to talk to you about all your different experiences because you got a lot of them.
Thanks. Thank you very much for having me.
No problem, dude.
All right, so there you have it, everybody. I definitely like in the middle of the interview where he says Bruce, and I didn't even bat an eye. And upon listening to it again and editing it, I was like, oh yeah, that's Bruce Springsteen. I never thought I'd have a person on the podcast that would be able to refer to Bruce as Bruce and not be like, you can't say that. You can't call him that. It's like calling Dave Matthews Dave, like you know him. Jay will obviously land on his feet somewhere else awesome in the near future. Visit propertyofzach.com and 100wordspodcast.com. And until next week, be safe, everybody.